Menthal, thank you so much for your time. Joining me now is Glenn Greenwald, columnist on civil liberties and U.S. national security issues for The Guardian newspaper. Glenn broke the Edward Snowden story in The Guardian and wrote today's story about XKeyscore. Glenn, I am getting confused, okay? I have to say, totally honestly, when a new program is described, and I read several times the article about XKeyscore, I can't tell if what I'm reading about is basically a software interface tool that people are using to get data that's already being grabbed by other programs or under different authorization, or a distinct program of surveillance. It seemed to me today that what we're reading about is a tool that allows analysts to search from data that is being collected under legal authority of the FISA court. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. The program is a dual-use tool. It is a tool that allows analysts to search the entire database, but it is also a program for collecting data. So the NSA's own documents describe it as a tool designed to collect, quote, nearly everything a user does on the internet. It's designed to collect that and to store it into databases. So the database that you're talking about with XKeyscore has 41 billion internet records stored each and every month for a 30-day period. And what is different about it is that unlike, say, surveillance under the FISA court, the analyst sits at his or her desk and they search for things when they don't even know the person that they're searching for. They can search just by general keyword, or they search email accounts for certain words, or they search user browser histories or Google searches for names, and then they start assigning suspicion to people and then tracking them. So it has nothing really to do with the FISA court. Remember, the FISA court is necessary only when you're targeting a U.S. person. This database does contain lots of communications of U.S. persons, but it's done completely independent of the FISA court.
So my understanding is that they have to clear some bar of justification for the foreignness of the person that they are clearing for in order for it to be within the four squares of the law as the NSA understands it. Is that right?
Okay, so let's just be really clear on that, on the law. Lots of people always say in order to intercept the emails or listen to the calls of American citizens, you need first to go to a FISA court and get a warrant. That is absolutely false. In order to target a U.S. person, to say I'm going to listen to all of their phone calls or all of their emails, you do need to go to a FISA court and get a warrant. Of course, the FISA court is notorious for never saying no, but that's a separate issue. But if you want to listen to the calls or emails of Americans when they're communicating with foreigners or people that you think are foreigners, you do not need a FISA court warrant. You simply scoop it up along with the rest of the foreign-to-foreign communications, and all of that goes into the same database, and oftentimes even purely domestic calls goes into that same database for lots of different reasons. As Ron Wyden has been saying, they're vastly exceeding the scope of the law even as they understand it, and they're very serious violations. And so there's virtually no oversight on these analysts. They just click a click-down menu, they type 4 words into justification, we think he's foreign, we think he works for a foreign government. Nobody checks or monitors or approves what they're doing, and they're often running with extremely invasive surveillance.
So that to me seems like the big issue in question here, because the NSA's defenders that I've been reading and talking about will talk about the institutional culture of the place. And I've heard this analogy I'd like you to respond to, right? It is possible that there's thousands of IRS agents who can just pull up people's tax returns, which are incredibly invasive, right? I mean, they say a lot of things about you. There are thousands of IRS agents that could order audits based on any political animus or an ex-girlfriend they didn't like, right? The thing that stops that largely is an institutional culture in which people realize they're going to be caught if they do that, possibly go to jail, face sanction, face career, the end of their careers. And the people who defend the NSA say that same thing exists inside the NSA, and you have to distinguish between the capacity they have technically and what the actual institutional norms inside the NSA stop people from doing. What's your response to that argument?
I have 2 responses to that argument. First of all, if it were true that the NSA were free of serious abuse, it would be the first time in human history that a massive, strong, potent surveillance system was created in the dark with no checks, and human beings didn't abuse it. The history of the United States should lead anybody to realize that building a massive surveillance state without serious checks and oversight will lead to abuse. That was the lesson of the Church Committee, that for decades the United States government seriously abused surveillance because nobody was looking over their shoulder to see what it was they were doing. They didn't have to go to courts and get approval for each individual warrant, so they eavesdropped on Martin Luther King and the anti-war movement and all kinds of political groups for improper purposes. But secondly, as secret as the NSA is, we know there's serious abuse. Chris, in 2011, there was an 86-page ruling from the FISA court saying that what the NSA was doing systematically violated the Constitution and the law. As I said, Ron Wyden just this week got James Clapper to admit that there are numerous violations of the law that the NSA is committing, and they try and slough it off and say it's not intentional, but Wyden said it's much more serious than the government is letting on. The problem is it's all done in secret, but the lesson of the United States historically over the last century is that if you build this surveillance system and don't have very aggressive oversight, it will inevitably be abused, and we have evidence that it is being abused.
Not just the lesson in the United States, I would add. Glenn Greenwald from The Guardian, thank you so much.